This is the review notes number 2. We're going to start by talking about equations and the terminologies for them. Equation is when two expressions are set equal to each other. So on review notes 1 we talked about what an expression was with no equal sign, but now with an equal sign we have an expression or two expressions set equal to each other. In this particular case, now the key point is you have an equal sign. You have an equal sign. Now, when there's no equal sign, again, we call it an expression. When we have an equal sign present, setting two expressions equal to each other, we have an equation. A proportion is when you have two fractions set equal to each other, and we usually solve those by cross multiplying. So let's first start by translating the sentence into an equation. So here we have 5 times x minus 20 is y squared. So 5 times x, it can be written like that, no multiplication symbol in between is needed, just 5x minus 20 is y squared. And that's how we would write that sentence into an equation. If we want to go from an equation into a sentence, we would write eight times n cubed is equal to m plus 1. Now there's quite a few different ways we could write this. We could say 1 more than m, etc., or the cube of n, but in essence they are the same. Let's solve this one. Now this is a two-step question, a two-step solution process. As we did in review 1, we would undo the equation. We would undo the addition and subtraction that was necessary first. So in this case we are subtracting 8. Here's the variable, so we're trying to get that alone. Okay, so we're going to take, and they're subtracting 8, so we're going to add 8 to both sides. Again, why do we add it to both sides? Because an equation is balanced. If you do something to one side, you must do it to the other. That would leave us with 10a equals 30. We would then undo the multiplication. In this case, it's times 10, so we undo it by dividing by 10. And I should have clarified that when you undo, they cancel each other out on that side, just like on the dividing by 10, we are undoing the times 10, so they cancel out. And that would then leave us with a equals 30 divided by 10 is 3. Again, we're going to solve, so we're going to take a look at finding the variable first, and it is there, so we want to get that by itself. Again, we would do addition and subtraction first before we deal with the dividing by 6 here. Now you have a negative 11 on this side, and that's the same as minus 11. So we're going to add 11. We always look to the sign in front of it, in front of a number, to decide if we're going to add or subtract. In this case it's minus, so we add. So now on the right side we have r over 6 and negative 9 plus 11 is plus 2. Now, I'm going to take that back. I like the color blue better. Alright, so how do we solve this? Well, we would undo the division by multiplying by 6. We have to do both sides. And again, as before, these, when we undo, we're canceling out what we're trying to move. So now we would have r equals 12. Example 5, we have a proportion. Now I could have done the previous example in proportion method by putting the 2 over a 1, but these are two legitimate ways to solve. So let's look at this now where we actually have two fractions that equal to each other, and it is therefore called proportion. The variable that we are solving for is k, so cross product would say to cross multiply, and that would give us 5 times k equals 9 times 10, and once we do that calculation we get 90. We would then do as we did before and undo the times 5 by division, and then we have k equals 18. So again, when we have equations, we can solve. When we have expressions, all we can really do is simplify by combining like terms if possible. Here we have another proportion. So as we did before, we will cross multiply, and that will give us 5x equals 3 times 4, which is 5x equals 12. We would undo that by dividing by 5. And notice now that we have, again this is being undone, notice now that we have x equals a fraction. It doesn't calculate out. And this can be written in a couple of ways. This is called improper. If we change it to proper, we would say 5 goes into 12 how many times evenly? That would be 2. That would leave 2 left over. So 2 and 2/5. Or we could actually do the division problem on a calculator or by hand in long division, and we would get 2.4. And you want to pay close attention to the directions to find out which form you're being asked to give. Alright, notice in the last question here we have a fraction on one side as we did a couple of problems earlier, but not on the other side. So we actually have, this is not a proportion. We could make it a proportion, but we're actually going to just follow the method we used before. I'm going to multiply both sides by 4, and I should do this first as I did before. We're trying to get to x. So notice that x plus 10 is in the numerator spot. Now this process can be confusing because someone would say, well, that's minus 10. But it's all being divided by 4. So in actuality, I have to take care of the division first. Alright, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. Oops. And that cancels those two out, which leaves us with 10 plus x equals 12. Now I can go ahead and subtract 10, and we get x equals 2. Now I'm going to do one thing here quick. Because it does have value here to say, because a lot of people have trouble with this process right now, but if I wrote this as 3 over 1, if it's easier to look at it this way, then by all means go ahead. Because now we have created a proportion by putting 3 over 1. Remember, 3 over 1 is the same as 3, so we can do that. And when we look at it that way, we can cross multiply, which would give us 10 plus x times 1. Now this would actually be a distribution question, but when you distribute 1 times 10 plus x, you're going to just have 10 plus x. And that's the key to understand here. It would be distributed. So I'm going to write this out just to clarify that and to bring emphasis to that. And then I have 4 times 3. Again, if I distribute the 1, nothing changes, so it's just as it was. 10 plus x equals 4 times 3, which is 12. And we are right back where we were. So two different ways to do that question. This one is preferred by a lot because they have trouble with fractions, but they are very comfortable with cross multiplying. And this ends the video for review number 2.